it was like a cry from the pit of my stomach. It was a constant no, like no, man. And I didn't even know him, and I never will get to know him.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Prelude podcast, where we feature personal stories told by people from all walks of life. In each episode, our guests share their experiences and the important moments that have shaped their perspective on the world. Prelude explores the moments that make up our lives, what it means to be human in today's world, and what we can learn by listening to each other's stories. So we're really excited to launch our series, and in this opening episode, Prelude introduces Ali from Greater London. In this episode, Ali speaks about his suburban childhood upbringing and a sudden shift to council estate life, coaching and mentoring of teenagers through football, and helping strangers who are in need. He also shares his view on gang culture in the UK and the enduring tragedy of knife crime across the country through the lens of a life-changing moment for him. This episode contains explicit content and graphic descriptions of the events, so listener discretion is advised. We hope that you'll find listening to Ali's journey as fascinating as we did. And if you have any comments or feedback on this episode, please let us know on our social media channels. So, without further delay, here is Ali's story.
My name's Ali, I'm 38 years old. So I've lived in the UK ever since I was around 2-3 years old, and lived in a great, beautiful upbringing in Chesington for about 10 years of my life, into my early teens, up to 16 actually. Chesington was beautiful for me because it was introducing me to a beautiful family life and surroundings, and again through that we had a huge field which we played on with all of the lads, and the girls and the boys in the neighbourhood would always congregate around there, and a lot of it would be football related or doing things that, you know, kids do. We had like a rope swing, we had like a little stream in the woods, so we used to ride our bikes a lot. Football in particular was the most important one for me, that ultimately again shaped my life. Huge field, just like a football pitch. I had a lot of the older lads as well playing football, and I'd always remember trying to get involved. They'd always put me as a keeper, obviously being the young one. Yeah, just go and goal, just like, you know, take these shots that we're just going to smash at you. And actually that taught me the best way to play the game. You know, you play with a tough and then you're just fine. And I had there was one guy in particular who's a close family friend and a close friend of my older brother. His name's Paul, and I believe to this day that he taught me everything I know in terms of the football mentality, but also the love for the game, and also technically how to go about playing it. Because he would always spend a few more minutes after everybody's called in to sleep and it's just about to go dark. He would, no, do it this way with your right foot. I tell you what, use your left foot. How about headering? How's your touch? But I did learn a lot from Chesington, and especially the fact that when we later moved on to Kingston upon Thames, it was a place that we didn't necessarily want to leave, Chesington, but we had to make that change. Unfortunately, we had our house repossessed after some financial struggle, but we were moved to a council estate, and a huge, different world basically, to the beautiful upbringing I had in Chesington, with the greenery and the kids playing out there, and a big field, straight into a kind of constrained area of a lot of people that are struggling in one block. And that, as you can imagine, taught me a lot about life. With football being a passion, it was the only constant that made me happy. And it led me to this point in my life right now where we run coaching sessions. I'm part of a club called Real Dundonald, and the overall umbrella is Dundonald Development. It's a reason for the name Dundonald. It's a area in Wimbledon, and through playing as a Sunday League team and picking out some really good talent through the years and being successful, you know, we won leagues, we won cups, and kind of early days of social media, so we didn't have like, you know, a following in that sense, but a lot of teams in the area knew who we were, you know, and to this day know who we are now. So along with that, it kind of snowballed, the snowball effect of, you know, playing as a Sunday league, but you could do more about this. So the management started a youth team and brought into affiliations with the FA and FA Charter Standard Club, which is great. The youth team on their first season won the league. And with that kind of success and that kind of growth, it was just natural that we started summer camps, football mashups, got involved with local councils, really getting kind of the social media or millennials away from the technology and away from the screen time, away from, sorry to say, you know, health issues, obesity, mental health issues that young kids now, like, depressed. You know, you come across a lot of young kids nowadays where it's like, I scratch my head. They shouldn't be feeling depression. They should be feeling happiness, joy, beauty. You know, these things that life should, you know, teach us and show us. So we wanted to get them away from all of that and enjoy being healthy, enjoy being out in the park playing football. With the teachings of football, which is the slogan of the Dondonald development as well, teaching through football. And the team being, you know, together each achieve more. That's always been the fundamentals. Any ages, any gender, any abilities, or all abilities, sorry. We invite them for 3-hour sessions for 3 days a week to simply have fun, however, learn the fundamentals of football, which ultimately stream into kind of the fundamentals of life. Every single one of them goes away and goes home learning something, and the next time they come to the session, they've changed. It's really refreshing to see that the things that we do teach them and show them have been applied, and they can make a greater change for themselves. And for me, that turnaround shows that we're successful. We've definitely seen kids who have come in and left as adults. So along with my work with the Dondonald development setup, I've recently started coaching with Surrey soccer schools in Cobham with a great group of like-minded coaches. I'm also collaborating with a growing sports development organisation called YMKPT, where we work in sports performance, football specifically, focusing on physical fitness and mental well-being. Along with that, training academy talent through to professional sports people. It's really rewarding working with teens and getting them away from the horrors that go on in the street and gang violence and being a member of a gang, or all this bullshit about getting into, you know, a ridiculous culture that may end up in tragedy. Well, the last few years of my life, I can sum up right now as quite blurry, and I'm still trying to make sense of what the fuck has just happened. Now, through career and, you know, stints of unemployment, the culmination of that and not knowing what I wanted to do in life apart from, you know, making a difference, but then being sick of waking up to sales all the time, and also being in a relationship where I look back at now and it was probably something that I had obsessed over more than understanding and enjoying it. And my life completely turned around. Now, at this point, it coincided with my parents, who had spent a long time back in Jordan, sharing, you know, getting older with family members. But yeah, they'd spend time in the UK and they'd spend time in Jordan. Within that period, I was living in my parents' flat in Kingston. My brothers and I felt that through some, you know, illness and health issues with my parents, we decided to make sure that, you know, they were here for a extended period of time. Unfortunately, my mother was diagnosed with liver cancer in April 2018. I was really struggling in the background to keep things together. So along with, you know, my mum's diagnosis, which really shook up the family, the impact on my mum specifically, shit got real and the family pulled together, and it was a huge adjustment, but I knew I had to make it. for the sake of my parents and my family, and also myself. Living where we do, we do come across a lot of random stuff, as a lot of people do when they live in and around council estates. But there was one instance that really shook me up when I had heard some screaming, and I had looked out my window, and there's this guy kind of chasing this girl, but like, she was trying to get away from him. And then I heard a bottle of wine smash or something. Well, sorry, it turned out to be a bottle of wine, but a bottle had smashed, and I thought he actually kind of struck her with it. Turned around and she pushed him away. By the time I moved from my bedroom, the view that I had, to my balcony, I had seen the guy grabbing her up and then kind of pinning her to the ground and punching her. My first reaction was to run down. I don't know why, and looking back at it, it's quite dangerous because I don't know what the guy was capable of doing. I went down, kind of shoved him out of the way, and then just kept on constantly asking the girl, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" She kept on saying, "Please call help! Please call help! He's crazy." So I kept on fending him off her, and then trying to fathom what the hell's going on. And clearly, this guy was a threat to this girl. So yeah, I kind of made sure that he didn't get anywhere near her until the police arrived, gave all the statements and stuff like that, and arrested this dickhead. And the gentleman was an abusive partner, it turned out to be, and he had threatened to kill her that night. So I was actually surprised by a visit by her parents, like a few days later, with a box of chocolates and a card saying, "Thank you, you were a hero to us," and all of this stuff. But really, I don't take too well with those compliments, and I just did what came naturally to me, and I had assumed that everybody else would do. So she had also messaged me as well, thanking me and saying to me, "Look, without your help, he would have killed me." So yeah, I mean, I start looking back at that, and the breakup, my mum being diagnosed, losing that independence, wondering what the fuck I'm going to do with my career, where I'm going, that happening. Yeah, I started believing that what the fuck's going on with my life, it's just like one thing after another. A random thing that happened in between all of that. I can't even remember when it was exactly, but I was coming out of work, and I saw a guy that had just parked up, and I'd kind of looked at another car which was about 4 or 5 meters away. There was a pushchair, and the lady was loading her shopping into her back seat, but the pushchair was at the back of the car. There was a baby crying, and she was kind of seemed like a bit frantic, and a guy had parked up his car. I don't know why, it's like an intuition thing that I've always had. I don't know, I can't explain it, but I just felt something was gonna go wrong. And lo and behold, this car started just slowly rolling towards the other car with the fucking pushchair right there. So my instinct was to jump in the way, so I pushed the pushchair out of the way, kind of maybe into the road a bit. The lady had grabbed the pushchair, and I'd seen the car obviously way too close to me, so I kind of stupidly put my hands up as if I was some kind of superhero. I ended up crushing my hand. I broke my hand in between my wrist and it was actually my hand and my wrist, and I ended up in a plaster cast for 3 months. But again, the lady was looking at me, screaming, thinking, "Oh my God, he's being crushed." I was like, whoa, I was like worried about her, but I hadn't been crushed, but it was, I didn't really feel the pain. But yeah, so saving that baby as well, I don't even look back at it as saving a baby. I just thought, just doing what's instinctive and doing the right thing. But yeah, I ended up with being in a cast for 3 months, and what else? What next? So with all of this that was happening in my life, I started believing that I maybe had a purpose to literally help people. You sometimes think like, oh, I'm thinking like as if it's a film, when really I'm not. I'm not ever in on helping people about recognition. I never help people to expect anything back. But I find so much satisfaction and a great feeling when I do. But the fact that I haven't chosen to be in that place, a lot of people have told me through the shit that I've been through, you're at the right place at the right time. I always used to question, was I actually in the wrong place at the right time? Or the wrong place at the wrong time? It all gets a bit confusing, but the fact remains, I was there. And I'd never ever once thought about my own safety, only about the safety of others, and they needed help at that point. All of the shit that had happened occurred within the space of 3 months. Very intense. I started becoming very indifferent towards my own feelings. I felt very numb, not knowing that this was all a build-up to the potentially life-changing tragedy that happened in the early hours of August the 5th. My brother and I, we have one very close friend. His name is Hamza. He lives quite a bit away from us now, so we don't tend to see him that much. And that night, the next morning, we were planning to go to the beach. So that actually meant that we needed to be up very, very early. But for some reason, it struck midnight and I just couldn't get to sleep. Bit fidgety, just had a really rotten feeling in my stomach, and kind of that feeling of intuition came up again. By 2 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't sleep, and I was thinking to myself, I don't know if it's through excitement. I hadn't seen Hamza for a long time. My brother hasn't seen him for a long time. It was just like, after everything that had happened, it was a much needed getaway, much needed trip. But for some reason, I just couldn't get to sleep. So it all started at around 1:30. I heard some commotion outside, but again, around the block and the estate, you tend to hear maybe, people messing around or coming back from the club, whatever. It's just like most people, the London sounds, I'd call them. But this time it felt like there was some commotion. So I peeked out the window, my bedroom window at that point, and it seemed like a group of young lads kind of moving in different directions, and a little bit of kind of commotion. Didn't think anything of it. And I went to the balcony approximately 1:45 to have a cigarette. So by the time I got on my balcony and sparked my cigarette, I had heard screams of help, cries of help, and not the usual ones that you would hear, the pit of the stomach, help, and something was seriously wrong. I couldn't make out the lads, but there were a few. One in particular who was either dazed or, at that point initially I thought he was drunk, kind of, maybe falling in the street. But I could clearly see, to my horror, a splut of blood out of his neck, and he hit the ground. After I had seen this guy hit the ground and his friend get onto the phone, it's a space of seconds, by the way, he must have been trying to connect to an ambulance at that point, and he was shouting out, I need an ambulance, I need an ambulance, where the police, etc. Again, that literally 2-3 seconds I'd seen that. I remember getting my trainers on and running down the stairs. I didn't even get into the lift. We're on the 5th floor. And looking back at it now and through statements and police statements, it turned out that I was downstairs within 17 to 22 seconds. I don't know how I made it that quickly, but I sprinted down there. So I'd observed the scene, and upon approaching the victim, the seriousness of the situation had hit me so hard that I just broke into action. The poor fella had been stabbed in the neck, and no one had been administering any type of CPR or anything that could comfort him. And I just jumped straight into action. And look, I don't know anything about how to save anybody's life or medically or what I need to be doing, but I do remember some things from a really basic first aid at work course that I did back in my jobs before. I was nominated to do it, and I actually enjoyed doing it because just in case anybody had any issues in the office or asthma or any insulin that they needed, I would always kind of go onto the scene and help them out. So with that basic first aid, I knew to assess the situation. However, in this situation, it's very hard because you don't know what's going on around you, and I quickly had observed that most of them were his friends, but there was a threat of potentially the person who did this still lurking around. I approached this kid, and he was critically injured, splurting blood out of his neck, and one of his friends constantly asking him, to stay alive. And I instantly started administering some kind of CPR. I looked around. I told one of his friends to apply pressure to the wound, and at that point, it was somebody who'd lived above in a kind of first floor balcony or something. She had brought down like some towels, but this happened so quickly that I don't understand how it all kind of pieced together. But I had these towels, and I was constantly telling this guy to just, if you need to help me, we need to keep this guy alive. Place as much pressure as you can on the wound, on the neck wound. Just keep applying pressure. And what I had done was constantly checked his pulse and started giving him chest compressions. And I really want to set the scene here because, some people have seen some crazy shit in their lives. But at that point, and bearing in mind what had happened to me recently, remember the mind frame of being, what the fuck next? I kind of expected it, and the feeling of why I was up that night, and I should have been really asleep. I was up for a reason. I was there, and I needed to help. It was as simple as that. Now, to set the scene, running down 5 flights of stairs in a block should be tiring enough. I can't even remember being out of breath at the bottom of the stairs, running into the scene, or eventually walking into the scene and seeing what the fuck is going on in front of me. The guy's laying down, splurting out blood in his neck. His mates constantly asking him, are you alive? Are you alive? What's going on? Is he going to die? Another guy not knowing what's going on. 2 or 3 girls that were kind of screaming or crying. Other people trying to help. There was actually somebody who was kind of quite drunk who kept on coming back and forth to the scene, and we tried to kind of keep them away. It was just a fucked up scenario. And we were all waiting for the police. We were all waiting for an ambulance. And they didn't eventually come until 8-9 minutes later. And that's 8-9 minutes of people who are not professionals in saving anybody's life. Hence, we needed to kick into action. There was 2 other bystanders that were really great help to me, passing me towels, making sure that we applied pressure on the guy's neck where he had unfortunately been stabbed. It looked to be stabbed. I checked if he had had any other injuries around his body. Visibly, I couldn't see anything, no other blood from his other parts of his body, so it was clear that was the main injury. Didn't have time to ask questions or anything like that. Just kick into action and get started. So one of them I kept on constantly telling one of his friends he was distraught. He was absolutely distraught. You get the screams, you get the cries of what's going on. And for me, I honed in at that point and just focused on this young victim. He was a young early 20s from Asian origin by the looks of it, and one of his friends was actually speaking to him in Arabic. So I do speak Arabic, and I actually started saying to him, stay with us, we've got you, you're okay, you're comforted, just stay with us, talk to us if you can. With the injury, unfortunately, it seemingly felt like he wanted to tell us something, or he wanted to speak. And at that point, I kept on saying to him, just reassuring him he doesn't need to say anything, and we're there for him. Now, through all of this, I'm doing chest compressions, and with every chest compression, you hear the squidge of blood where it was soaked across his chest. You've got people around trying to help when really we needed to clear the area and make sure that they're kind of not crowding whatever was happening. There was people watching, which I found really fucking weird, people from the balconies and stuff, and they just didn't seem like they were helping. But again, I don't blame them, because what they're looking at is quite horrific. And through giving him chest compressions, we tried to keep him alive as long as possible. I started feeling, unfortunately, like no pulse in his left hand, but a really faint one in the right hand. So not one point I stopped doing chest compressions. At 10, take a second. 10, take a second. The same time, there was one other lady, I believe she was on the phone to the ambulance, and they were kind of instructing me to do a few things which I had already been doing, luckily enough. So when the police arrived, that was a life-changing moment for me also, because they had arrived before the ambulance, and I was kind of moved away from the scene, although I was really trying to help. So another officer carried on the chest compressions. But the thing that really horrified me, shocked me, and has changed my life is that when I looked around, none of his friends or the people that were helping him initially and crying were there when the police arrived. And that was a constant reminder that life has unfortunately turned into the youths being sucked into this gang culture. Now, even if they were losing their friend or not, they couldn't be at the scene when the police arrived. That shocked me because it left me and two other people there. And the police were there. And the ambulance turned up about a minute and a half to 2 minutes after the police arrived. I decided that I would kind of try and stay close to the scene, but obviously with the police procedures, they kept on backing me away. And I felt invested in this right now. Now, my hands were absolutely drenched with this poor guy's blood. His blood all over my shorts and my t-shirt and even my trainers. But you don't really think about things like that while you're helping, But the scary thought that is that, I hope that this guy would be alive, When they kept on trying to resuscitate him, and this went on for about 20 minutes, and I was kind of still looking over, I started visualizing a lot of weird shit, such as, can't wait until I visit him in hospital and, talk about what happened, or, introduce myself, get to know him and see a happy person, someone who's alive and bubbly. I'll never forget the moment that they pulled the white sheet over his body. I don't think I've ever it was like a cry from the pit of my stomach. It was a constant no. like, no, man. How the fuck did this happen? And the guy's dead. He's gone. And I didn't even know him. And I never will get to know him. Through helping someone or trying to save their life in this case, you feel like you know them. I'm constantly looking at his face and constantly looking at his eyes, medically, obviously, making sure that he's still conscious. Before the police arrived, I felt that we had lost him. His eyes rolled back. His parts of his face were kind of blue. He had a bit of froth around the mouth area, and but there was still that faint pulse that I kept on feeling, that the police officer also felt after, and obviously the ambulance crew, hence they were there for a good 20-30 minutes after, trying to keep him alive. After he was pronounced dead and I had my kind of pit of the stomach cry, it was a great shame. You look at this body on the ground, which was a 22-year-old who was alive half an hour earlier, and you know that his life has ended on a fucking pavement on a road next to a block miles from home. And so many thoughts were flooding through my head, from the fact that, people were asleep, his family were asleep right now, and going to be receiving the news of the loss. You just look at it right there when someone's pronounced dead. You looked at a dead body already. The police sirens not necessarily the sirens, the lights were it's just flashing lights everywhere. And then one by one, there was a CID pop up, and then the chief paramedic, and then all of a sudden it was cordoned off, and there was 16, 17 professionals on the site, marking up the ground and putting evidence to one side. And I was in the middle of this shit. What was going on? I've always wondered, a lot of the times when you do see kind of a scene where unfortunately somebody has lost their life, why they'll be barefooted. But I'm sure that's kind of a procedure where the ambulance needs to kind of cut through or get to certain parts of the body to, I don't know, administer medically injections, or I don't know what it is, and I never will know. But all I could see was the guy's bare feet and the rest of his body covered up with a white sheet. And I started looking at this moment and thinking to myself, this guy was once a 3-year-old toddler living a lovely life, or living a life, 5 years old, going to school, being happy, then developing. And then I started thinking about the reasons why I love coaching and helping and aspiring for teenagers and youths to keep away from this shit. And really, when I put both of them together, I think it was definitely a life that was cut short way too soon. Way too soon. I became afraid of death, which I had never, ever been afraid of before. And bearing in mind what had happened to me kind of in the few months before that, this was the point where I'd taken it as, yeah, man, life is really short. Life is very cruel, but at the same time, it could be taken in an instant. And I, from that day, started fearing death. So after the victim was pronounced dead, and I had the feeling of being numb, as I explained, and others being shocked within the scene. I think it's the chief paramedic, who tends to be, I believe, at kind of surgeon level, wearing orange, who'd come over to me and provided me with what I really needed to feel that night. And in his words, they had thanked me and the other two other people that had helped within this scene, trying to keep the victim alive, and we had provided him with the best opportunity for kind of saving his life, which unfortunately didn't turn out to be. The next side of things were, I don't know how, but I get a lot of Facebook messages, and the next part was the social media, which was something that I couldn't really overcome. It turns out that I had a lot of mutual friends with the victim, because everybody knows everybody around the area, and particularly around the block, and they're speaking about him. And I to this day, I don't know how my name was kind of, through the circles and people maybe knowing what happened or seeing it. I was sent messages with things such as, oh, you're such a hero for this, and here, like, the fuck, I ain't a hero, man. Hero saved people's lives, yeah? And I started being really harsh on myself at that point, along with the other feelings that I felt, ultimately being numb. I felt that I had failed. I felt that I couldn't save him, and I started blaming myself. Upon reflection, that was my mind state back then. My mind state was that of, as I mentioned, what the fuck else? And that I had failed in saving this guy's life. But yeah, I was getting messages, and then there was obviously the people that were always quite kind of like, what happened and what was going on, and I just weren't prepared to say anything or speak to anybody. And the immediate support system that day, and a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy right now, I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep at all. I chose to block it all out instantly that day, that morning. I just come back from the CID. I told my mum and dad everything, and what was happening, and wasn't able to cry. It just built up sadness, and the only thing that we could think of, and I remember it being my brother asking me, should we still go and see Hamza, our best friend? I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it, man. We actually ended up making the most of it, driving down to Brighton and having a day on the beach. So, how was it? From 2 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock. Let's say a good 8 hours later, after this, I've got a seat facing the sea, and with my best mate and my brother. We're just relaxing. They were conscious of the fact they didn't want to talk too much about what was going on. I don't really want to talk about what was going on, but they could clearly see that I'm just not in the mind zone. So I spent a lot of the time just looking out and listening to the sea. It's actually quite good and therapeutic for me immediately after what happened. And I just wanted to get away from everything. My phone's still belling up, because then people now are starting to call me, the people that know me for good and they're in my contact list, starting to call me and ask me what was going on. I sifted through the people that were kind of just wanted to know for the sake of it. And there was a couple of good friends that called me, and I'd spoken to them, and I kind of spoke as if nothing was going on and nothing had happened. And I just wanted to harbour that kind of pain myself, and I don't want to reflect it. I'm all good, kind of positive, yeah, it's all good. And again, overall being numb. Now look, I may come across as if like, I've been hurt by this the most, but most of my hurt and pain that I'm trying to kind of get across is that, there are people who are much more in pain. That day is always going to be much more devastating for his family. This was a son, a brother, a friend. I believe he may have been an uncle too. Whatever it may be, this guy was a human. He lost his life, and through going through Facebook, social media and Facebook in particular, it started unraveling who he was. I started knowing his full name. There was pictures of him posted, and for me, the most I've ever looked at a picture in my life of anybody, has been of this guy. Because the more I looked at his face, the more I wanted that to be at the forefront of my mind, not his face while he was losing his life and struggling to speak, and ultimately is the most horrifying thing that I've ever seen in my life and ever will. I felt that I needed to find solace in my heart. I needed to understand what was going on. And once I kind of painted a picture, the more I did that and I felt it, the more my heart was a little bit at ease about what had happened, or I could use it as a landmark in my life to either change my life or to provide people with inspiration to not end up in that situation. Hence, with things like football coaching, it's been elevated even more after this. When I see a kid that potentially on the block I've seen grow up, and then he's potentially getting to the point where he wants to join those gangs or get into it or sell drugs or be shifty and start. I've always been that guy. Even in my coaching uniform, when I come back, coaching gear, I've always said to him, "You're keeping out trouble. If there's anything you want to talk about, just give us a shout. Look, you're a good lad. You're a good girl. Just keep your head, screwed on, and finish college. Things that they won't hear from many other people, especially strangers. But they're not really strangers because they see my face around quite a lot. So I set out on a voyage, basically, to not just make myself feel better, but help out, even after what had just happened. I really, really felt it important to meet the guy's family, which I knew that through the investigation it was hard to do. They actually passed on my details as requested by me, to the family. And if I was able legally to speak to them, or just all I wanted to say to them was, I did the best I could. Like, literally, that's all I wanted to tell them at that point. Just, I did. He didn't die. He didn't die alone. I comforted him, and just let them know that. I mean, there's possibly nothing that I could ever say to them that would bring their kid back, their child back, their young man back, their love back, and abolish the loss. There's nothing I could do to change it, basically. But I needed to let them know that he didn't die alone, and we did everything we could. And if there is anything that I could ever do for them, I'm always there for them. I just needed to do that. So there's an opportunity where I kept tabs, and I kept on actually asking. There was one officer in particular that was quite open with his contact, and I'd asked him about the funeral or anything else. But his sister had actually reached out to me, which surprised me. And usually I'm not the kind of person not to know what to say. But I actually sat on her text for like 2 days. I just didn't know what to say. I couldn't find the words. But her message was quite beautiful to me. She had been told who I was, what I tried to do. And she had said, look, everything happens for a reason, and we will meet you eventually. I just replied to her and expressed, my deepest condolences, and letting them know that I'm at their disposal. Anything you need, anything ever, I'm there for you. I just felt like I just needed to be there for the family, even though I didn't know who they were. So she had told me details of the funeral, and I chose to go to the funeral. Fast forwarding after the funeral, and after that feeling of solace of meeting his father, and his father giving me a hug, and his brothers speaking to me, and me also hugging them and extending my condolences and my feelings towards what happened. Eventually, and fast forward kind of 8 months or so, 8 months to a year, I believe it was, I found myself in the Old Bailey giving the same statements in front of a packed courtroom with a jury. And for me, I was only there. Obviously, I didn't see what had happened, but I gave my series of events and presented that to the jury, which I'd hoped again would help the investigation and help ultimate justice for this victim. And the reason why I mentioned the Old Bailey, because it's the most historic and most famous and the biggest court in the UK, and it represents the UK justice system. I've seen it on TV, and it's just it's not a place that you would think you would see in life. And the reason why I mentioned this being such a significant point of my life, and through this ordeal, and how it affected me personally, is that I was thankful for the judge who dismissed the jury and then asked me to stay where I was, which worried me at first. I was like, well, what's going on here? And after the jury had been excused from the courtroom, he turned to me and, in as many words, thanked me and appreciated, the selflessness of my act. Even though, I can't answer back to a judge, but I didn't feel that still. I didn't feel that. And it was just a few sentences that he had mentioned saying, no matter what had happened, if we had more people thinking like you or being like you in society, then it would be a much better place. And ultimately, again, I had an opportunity to see the family after. And I met his mum for the first time at that point as well. So after embrace, like hugs and again reassuring them that if there's anything they need, you let me know. And the words of the judge, for me, I felt finally that I could quite possibly, close the chapter of feeling numb to then using it as something that I can move forward with in my life, make me stronger, and make sure as much as possible I can do what I can in society to ensure that no other kid gets to that stage where he's kind of killed in cold blood for no reason, basically. Look, after all that's said and done, and me explaining what had happened, I'm very conscious that, many people have gone through pain, much more pain than I have just explained that I've been through. They've been directly affected by knife crime, gun crime, this gang culture. But it's not every day that somebody dies in your arms. And my heart goes out to everybody that's gone through this or been affected directly or indirectly and lost friends, family through knife crime. And but I hope through speaking about these my feelings and what had happened to me through this and what other people have been through after events such as these tragic events, I hope that it makes it easier for people to understand or get through just how much pain can be inflicted on victims of these horrific crimes. Not just the victim's family, the victim's friends, the effect it has on society, the immediate neighborhood, wider society, ultimately across the country. I think this one action can have a ripple effect on so many different avenues of the issues that we do face. There's been examples most recently in life that have showed me that, I wish that we lived in a more altruistic society, people willing to help, as opposed to being that bystander. And fucking more recently, people pulling out their phones and recording to capture it and to get that recognition that it's their video or someone to see something horrible. Yeah, I mean, we can never run away from that, but don't you think if we all put our phones fucking down and then tried to help, maybe we wouldn't have as many losses that we had? Away from that, I've always felt that helping people is something that I've never thought about before. You don't think about these things; it just happens. But then when I look back at it and I analyse situations I've been in, I still don't understand why I move quickly as I do in a situation before most people have even thought about what's going on. I don't know. I mean, in the past, it's because I've maybe never thought about my own safety and I've thought about other people first. It could be the case that, I heard this statistic about 6 years ago, and it was if a Londoner saw injustice or something going wrong immediately around them, 1 in 10 would stand up. 1 in 10 would stand up to fight that injustice or help. That's crazy. If there's anything that we can do in society to be more active or be more aware of situations, and I'm not saying get yourself into danger in order to help somebody, because that may end up being another tragedy. And you have heard of stories where there's been people being selfless through terrorist attacks or through injustices in streets, and people have stood up and so standing up for people who are victims in situations. I don't know if it's part of people's nature or their makeup or how they've kind of been brought up or being a product of their environment. I am very grateful that I have that instinct in me, and I don't think I'll ever change. However, I have been more cautious with the fact that, it could end up going the other way for me. Do I care? If it saves somebody else, then so be it. And I believe that, everything happens for a reason. Everything's written. So if it's my time, it's my time. Just so happens that it hasn't been my time, and I will continue helping people if they are in some danger. My advice to anybody that gets caught up in a situation like this, or finds themselves in an unfortunate tragedy, to seek help, seek counselling, to speak to people. I know it will be very tough, and I still find elements of what happened very tough to discuss. But the more I do speak about it, and the more I face my own feelings about the tragedy of that night, the more it became real, and the more I can kind of possibly be a comfort to other people that have been through it themselves. So again, speaking about what had happened in all situations in life is possibly the first step to recovery and accepting what happened and moving forward with your life. I'm that much more conscious and passionate about making sure that nobody else ends up in that situation. When it comes to coaching children, kids, teens, I do see a lot of the victim in each one of these people that I aim to inspire. So I do have a deeper end goal of helping them and seeing how significant I can be within their personal development. And obviously through that, the channel of football is my outlet. And I always have in the back of my mind that, through my passion and love for football and teaching through football, it can be reflected upon these kids and these youths to ensure that they don't ever get anywhere near that kind of situation where their life could be cut short. Most of the youth today is fueled by social media and what they have to be and what they must be, what they've got, what they're wearing. We always used to have that rap culture back then, but looking back at it, it was like quite beautiful. It was like kind of togetherness. Yeah, we had our beef and we had our arguments, and some kids come over from another area. But the thing is that we'd fight, fisticuffs. There was some kind of tools used here and there. I'm not talking about tools that are going to kill people. We're talking about, bruise up another man. Yeah, cool, whatever. But then, it always turned into, or ended up being, being friends after that. It's really weird. But now, a youth could stab someone not knowing that they can kill someone. So it's like a norm. It feels like they're conditioned to either have a knife or a gun. I mean, we all know that, even possession of a knife can carry up to like 5 years imprisonment. Sorry, a gun, 5 years imprisonment. A knife, you're looking at 1 to 2 years at least. You don't walk around with these things. Keep them in the kitchens. My advice to anyone who knows anybody with a gun is stay as far away as possible from that person. And if anybody even tells you to hold a gun for you, don't even think about that, because you've lost your life. Now, when it comes to knives, on the other hand, it's the same thing. Don't ever carry a knife in the street. You don't even need to do that. So look, my advice, if there's a beef going on, if there's something that needs to be resolved, good old fisticuff could be the way. Yeah, fine. But then even understanding and maybe channel your aggressions through music, but in the positive way, because I see a lot of the music culture now not really directed at killing each other. If people understand the music that they listen to, even though it's an art form, there's a wider message of being together. You're in it together. And I think the more that you're in it together and you're understanding each other, the more that society can come together and there'll be less youth crime. Don't limit it to just like music. There's so many different art forms as well. There's sports. There's football, which I obviously have talked about a lot. There's individual sports that that provide that discipline and provide a getaway and a life away from real life. There are so many opportunities for people to become active and keep away from whatever's happened. I'm even reaching out to people who are in gangs right now, and if you're ever listening to this, and you need to make a decision to get out of this and inspire other people to get out of it, because obviously the real bad man is the one who can avoid situations like that, talk themselves out of situations like that, and really get on with life, inspiring people and not ending up killing people. Now, there'll always be people that, feel hard done by or oppressed, or they're not having a good time, or they face hardship in their lives, and that will constitute aggression and anger, and just having a channel of wanting to inflict maybe pain on other people. But if you want to be aggressive and angry, be intellectually angry and aggressive. Be an activist for a really good cause. Message that I'd also reach out to, government entities and schools, colleges, universities is, push and fund extracurricular activities for the youth, because I believe that this actually is fueled by the fact that these kids don't have anything to do, or at least they think they don't have anything to do. A lot of the times, it costs to go and partake in boxing sessions or football sessions or things like that. However, we have so many parks where you can go and kick a ball about with your mates, get involved in networks and circles, and there's people and entities that can help you get into this active life, as opposed to drag yourselves down a path where you believe blindly you're the bad man and you're making money and that's it. Because even with all of that, it will end up badly. Tell me one drug dealer, tell me one gangster, tell me one person who's holding a knife or a gun around the streets that it's actually ended up brilliant for. Yeah, that'll never happen. Vicious cycle. So bearing in mind everything that I've spoken about and my experiences in the lead up to the events of that night, with the mindset and what I've learned out of this, good has come out of it for me. I've been fortunate enough, even through my mum's battle of cancer. She's on the road to a full recovery, full liver transplant. You have to be fortunate enough to have these good things happen to you. I felt that I needed a good card dealt in my life. I'm taking everything that I've learned to improve my life, change my life, find and really go after what I believe in and being passionate about. The kind of thing that makes me want to wake up and live this life with passion and to the best. And I've always had that feeling a lot of the times that a lot of people feel where, life is just moving by, and a lot of people are moving by and moving forward and successful, but you're just like stuck in a rut and you just don't know how to move ahead. That's natural for everyone. Everyone works on their own timeline. And as long as you do what you need to do each day to not just survive, but make a better version of you when you wake up the following day, then fuck anyone's timeline. You'll get there in the end, and you'll end up finding what you're passionate about in life. And along the way, inspiring others. That's the most important thing. We come into this world with nothing. We leave with material nothing. But one thing that we can leave is a legacy, an inspiration, and knowing that if you've touched and affected people in a positive way, then take me to heaven, basically. So let's not be afraid of life. Let's be very passionate about living.
Thank you for listening to Prelude. If you've enjoyed this episode, please support us by leaving a review, subscribing to the show, or following us on social media. And we hope you'll join us again soon for the next episode of the Prelude podcast.